God said He will never leave us. He's going to go with us. And so that's your cue this morning. That's my cue. Why can we believe in the winds of change? And I believe revival is coming. There's not just going to be a political change in our country because it's happening. There's going to be a spiritual change in our country. Great things are going to happen. Revival is coming to South Africa. Good morning. The winds of change are blowing. The moment it's just a little breeze like the one blowing right now. But big things are coming for our country. And I want to ask you, are you ready to change and embrace change? Well, welcome to Timeout. My name is Jack Windt. I often hear people say to me, Jack, I want change for our country. We've just come out of an election. I want change in my business. I want change in my family. And yes, I want change in my finances. And there's nothing wrong with any one of those things. Because sometimes it costs change to move us out of where we are and give us momentum to go forward. However, there's a difference between saying that I want change and believing in change. When I say I want change, it means I would like to see change happening. But when I say I believe in change, I'm saying I'm willing to pay and make it happen. It's a buy-in. I'm committed to it. One is a desire, the other one is full commitment. Then it happens. And it reminds me of a time in the history of Israel as a nation when Jesus came to them. Israel had been praying for change for thousands of years. They had many countries that had occupied them, many forces that had occupied them. And at the time of Jesus, it was the Romans. They were a powerful nation, and they were in essence ruling them. And so the Jews were praying not just for a political solution, but they were obviously praying for a spiritual solution because they were looking for their Messiah. They were asking for their Messiah. They really wanted change. And then when Jesus came, they never recognized him. And it made me think about what Jesus had to say about that incident. In Matthew 11, verse 16, this is how Jesus described the nation that were asking for something, and when it came, they missed it. And so I want to encourage you this morning, don't miss it. Don't miss out on what God is doing right now. These are interesting times. These are exciting times for you and I to be alive. Matthew 11:16 says, to what can I compare? Jesus said, this generation. What's the comparison I could use to describe this generation? And he was talking about his generation that he came to. But it could also be our generation because it's very similar. It says, it is like children playing a game in the public square. And they complained to their friends. These children were playing a game that was obviously a game that was played by Jewish children of the time because, and the game was basically two things. They would either play that they were at a wedding and then they would dance, or they were at a funeral and then they would mourn, because those are the two things that they often saw in their community. So they would play a game with each other. But these children were complaining to their friends, Jesus said, because they said, we played a wedding song and you didn't dance. And we played funeral songs, but you didn't mourn. And we don't know what it is. You don't want to play along. We can't move you. And Jesus used this analogy to describe that's exactly how he felt when it came to Israel as a nation. He had done everything. He had played the wedding song. He had played the funeral song, but they weren't budging. They weren't doing anything. They were not moved. And this is a description of people that are stuck. When whatever you do, they will not be moved. They will not change. And I want to encourage you, don't be like those people that Jesus said, don't be like that generation. Be a generation that says, we recognize change. Now, Jesus came and he walked right in their midst. And even when they didn't see him, he said to them, I am the Messiah you've been praying for. And yet they still missed Jesus in their generation. And I just wondering, will we too miss Jesus in our generation if we don't understand that change is coming? The winds of change are blowing. Now, before there's a change, there's oftentimes also a change of leadership. And I'm reminded of the story of Moses, one of the greatest leaders in the Bible. And don't get me wrong, Moses was a great leader, but there was a time when he died, he stepped down. God took him out. And there was a man called Joshua. And Joshua 1 verse 9, like my shirt says, I'm going to read it to you in a while. Joshua had grown up all his life as a young man under Moses. He had heard Moses speak. He had watched Moses. Now Moses was gone. And God said to him, you the man, you the new leader, you're going to bring the change that Israel had always been praying for. They'd been wandering for 40 years in the desert, 40 years of not seeing the promises that they believed in. And now they were going to go over to their promised land. And God said, Joshua, you're going to take them. Change of leadership. And let's just read that together. It says, Joshua 1:9 says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? And this is the first thing I want to say to you this morning. If you want change in your life, in your business, in your family, in your relationships, if you're believing for change in our country, South Africa, that's great. The two things we must keep in mind when it comes to change, we need to be strong and courageous. It takes those two qualities to bring about change, to move us forward in our situation. And so God said to Joshua, be strong and courageous. But he also said this, the moment you want to affect change in your life, the moment we're believing for the winds of change to blow in South Africa, and I really believe that God's not finished with South Africa. We are still on his radar. And we are still on his agenda, I believe, as a country. And I also believe that if you believe in God this morning, God's not finished with you. You're still on his radar. You're still on his agenda. He cares about you. He cares about your family. He cares about your children. He cares about your future. He just cares about your desires. So don't forget that. Be strong and courageous. But the moment he said that to Joshua, he also said, do not be afraid. Because the first thing that visits us when we want to affect change is fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear that says, are you sure you want to change? Are you sure that's the right thing? And it brings indecisiveness because fear casts doubt upon our plans and our visions. And I want to encourage you, don't allow fear, because God said to him, do not be afraid. And the second thing he said, do not be discouraged. What a powerful weapon the enemy uses to discourage us by saying to us, what's the use of wanting to change? Nothing's going to change. But it's a lie. Anything can change and everything can change if we buy into it with conviction and we pay the price to make it happen. So we can affect change. You can affect change this morning because God said, don't be discouraged. But then he said a very powerful thing to them. He said, for the Lord your God, Joshua, will be with you wherever you go. What is the confidence that we can buy into change when God speaks, when we can buy into change, when we believe in it, is because God said he will never leave us. He's going to go with us. And so that's your cue this morning. That's my cue. Why can we believe in the winds of change? And I believe revival is coming. There's not just going to be a political change in our country because it's happening. There's going to be a spiritual change in our country. Great things are going to happen. Revival is coming to South Africa. Revival is coming to your home. Revival is coming to your business. Revival is coming into your marriage. Revival is coming into your relationship. And it's going to bring great change. All I want to encourage you this morning is be strong. Be courageous. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear take and rob you of that. And don't be discouraged, because God said, I will never leave you or forsake you. Thank you for watching this morning. My name is Jack Windt, and you've been watching Timeout, and I'll catch you next week.
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with